You think jealousy and murder are modern problems? Think again. 40,000 years ago, in caves scattered across Europe and Western Asia, our closest human relatives were already killing each other over mates, territory scarce, and resources. The Neanderthals weren't the gentle forest people. Some textbooks paint them as they were human. And humans kill. Deep in Spanish caves, French rock shelters, and Croatian highlands, we're finding something that changes everything we thought we knew about prehistoric violence. Skull fragments with percussion marks, rib bones snapped by human hands, cut marks on cervical vertebrae that spell out one thing: deliberate murder. The evidence sits in museum drawers and forensic labs, waiting for you to hear their 40,000-year-old stories. If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Nature Journal and the Journal of Archaeological Science. Now back to the story. El Cedron Cave in northern Spain holds 36 Neanderthal individuals. Not a peaceful family burial, not a natural disaster. Forensic analysis shows cut marks on 60% of the bones. These aren't butchering marks from predators or tool accidents. They're systematic, intentional. Someone took stone tools to these bodies with purpose. The radiocarbon dates put this massacre at 49,000 years ago. 12 adults, 3 adolescents, 21 children, all processed the same way. The DNA tells us more. Mitochondrial analysis reveals these weren't strangers. They shared maternal lineages, family members. The Y chromosome data shows the adult males came from outside the group. The women and children belong to the same bloodline. Picture it. A raiding party finds a family group. The foreign males are killed immediately. The women and children follow. Someone with Stone Age tools and Stone Age rage took their time with 36 human beings. But El Cedron isn't unique. Krapina in Croatia gives us 900 Neanderthal bone fragments from 24 individuals. The site dates to 130,000 years ago. Half the bones show cut marks, not random scratches. Deliberate incisions made by stone tools held by human hands. The long bones are broken in patterns consistent with marrow extraction. The skulls show impact fractures. Someone was eating these people. Anthropologist Tim White documented the processing sequence. First, the throats were cut. Cervical vertebrae from 3 individuals show blade marks across the neck bones. Then disarticulation, shoulder joints, hip joints, knee joints, all show the systematic separation that comes from someone who knows anatomy. Finally, marrow extraction. Every major long bone cracked open at the thickest point where the richest marrow sits. The teeth tell their own story. Krapina dental remains show defensive wounds. Chipped incisors, fractured canines. These are the marks left when someone bites down hard during violence. When you're fighting for your life with your teeth, Moula Gersi Cave in southern France holds the remains of 6 Neanderthals, 1 adult male, 2 adult females, 2 juveniles, 1 child. Radiocarbon dating puts them at 100,000 years ago. Every single bone shows processing marks, cut marks on the skull for scalp removal, percussion marks on long bones for marrow access, disarticulation marks at every major joint. But here's what makes Moula Gersi different. The bones are mixed with animal remains, red deer, roe deer, aurochs, that show identical processing marks. Same tools, same techniques, same sequence. The Neanderthals weren't just killed, they were processed as food alongside game animals. Someone spent hours turning human bodies into meals. The forensic evidence matches modern butchering patterns. Primary disarticulation to separate major body segments, secondary disarticulation to separate individual bones, filleting marks where muscle was stripped from bone, percussion fractures where marrow was extracted. This wasn't ritual. This wasn't desperate starvation. This was systematic cannibalism performed by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Vindija Cave in Croatia adds another layer, 42,000 years ago. Multiple Neanderthal individuals showing post-mortem processing. But Vindija gives us something else, evidence of selection. The cut marks concentrate on specific individuals, young adults, mostly male. The children and elderly show fewer processing marks. Someone was choosing their victims. The bone chemistry supports intentional violence. Strontium isotope analysis shows the processed individuals came from different geographic regions than the processors. These weren't family members killing family members. These were encounters between different groups. Territorial disputes that ended in systematic killing and consumption. Combe-Grenal in southwestern France pushes the timeline back further, 64,000 years ago, multiple occupation levels spanning 20,000 years, in layer 35. Researchers found fragmentary Neanderthal remains mixed with stone tools and hearth features. The bones show cut marks and burning patterns. Someone was using fire to cook human flesh, but layer 35 gives us more. Among the processed human bones, archaeologists found a cache of 28 stone points, unused, still sharp, hidden beneath a flat rock slab that required 2 people to lift. This wasn't a tool-making area. This wasn't a refuse dump. This was an armory. Someone was stockpiling weapons for violence they knew was coming. The associated fauna shows these Neanderthals were successful hunters. Bison bones with perfect projectile impact marks, horse skulls with single-strike kill wounds, reindeer processing stations with every bone efficiently stripped. They didn't turn to cannibalism from starvation. They turned to cannibalism from choice. Saint-Césaire in western France gives us our most recent evidence, 36,000 years ago, just as modern humans were expanding across Europe. The Neanderthal remains show systematic processing, identical to sites tens of thousands of years older. Same cut marks, same disarticulation sequence, same marrow extraction technique. Violence wasn't an early experiment that faded away. It was a constant through 40,000 years of Neanderthal existence. The Saint-Césaire individual was a mature adult female. Skull fragments show she lived to at least 35 years old, elderly for a Neanderthal. Her bones tell us she survived multiple injuries during life. Healed rib fractures, a partially healed skull depression, arthritis patterns suggesting repetitive stress. This woman had seen violence before. She survived it, until she didn't. Her final moments are written in bone. Cervical vertebrae show blade cuts that severed her spinal cord, a single stone tool drawn across her throat while she was still alive. The angle of the cut marks suggests she was lying on her back. Someone knelt over her and opened her throat like they were dressing an animal. Les Perdelles in southwestern France connects the dots. 52,000 years ago, multiple Neanderthal individuals showing systematic processing. But Les Perdelles gives us context. The processed human bones sit directly above a layer containing dozens of stone tools and hearth features. Stable isotope analysis of the tools shows they were used on human tissue immediately before being abandoned. The sequence is clear. A group occupied the cave. They brought tools. They brought victims. They processed human bodies around active hearths. Then they left everything behind and never returned. This wasn't a home base where violence happened accidentally. This was a killing site. Bone taphonomy studies show the processed remains at Les Perdelles were exposed to elements for months before burial by sediments. No one came back to clean up. No one came back to retrieve valuable stone tools. Something interrupted the normal pattern of cave use: fear, retaliation. The knowledge that other groups would come looking. But the killing wasn't random. Demographic analysis of processed remains across all sites shows patterns. Adult males are overrepresented among victims. Children show different processing patterns than adults. Elderly individuals often show evidence of natural death before processing. Someone was making choices about who lived and who died. Dental microwear analysis reveals dietary stress in the generations leading up to these violent episodes. Plant food scarring decreases, while meat processing marks increase. Climate proxy data shows these periods coincide with harsh winters and reduced game availability. Violence escalated when resources became scarce. Yet some caves tell different stories. Shanidar in Iraq, La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, Amud in Israel. Neanderthal remains showing careful burial. Bodies positioned intentionally, grave goods placed deliberately. Even evidence of flower offerings. The same species that systematically murdered their neighbors also mourned their dead. The contradiction sits in the fossil record like a challenge. How do you reconcile the tender burial of the Shanidar elder with the processed family at Elcidron? How do you square the flower pollen at La Chapelle-aux-Saints with the weapon cache at Combe-Grenal? The answer is simple. Neanderthals were human. They loved their own. They killed outsiders. Modern hunter-gatherer societies show identical patterns. The Yanomami of the Amazon basin, the Inuit of the Arctic, the Aboriginal Australians, within group cooperation and care, between group violence and competition. The anthropological record is clear. Small-scale societies with limited resources solve their problems with kinship bonds and controlled aggression, but Neanderthal violence shows sophistication beyond simple raid and retreat warfare. The systematic processing at multiple sites suggests learned behavior passed between generations. Someone taught these techniques. Someone refined them. Someone passed down the knowledge of which bones to break and how to break them. Tool analysis supports cultural transmission of violence. Stone points from weapon caches show consistent manufacturing techniques across thousands of years and hundreds of kilometers. The same knapping traditions that produced hunting spearheads also produced human-killing spearheads. Violence was integrated into material culture. Microscopic analysis of cut marks reveals tool types. Most human processing was done with small, Tucaran sharp flakes rather than large hand axes or spear points. Someone was selecting specific tools for specific tasks. Throat cutting required different implements than joint disarticulation. Scalp removal needed different edges than marrow extraction. This was specialized knowledge. Experimental archaeology confirms the patterns. Researchers using replica Neanderthal stone tools on donated human cadavers can reproduce every cut mark type found in the fossil record. The angles match, the depths match, the sequences match. Ancient humans with ancient tools were processing human bodies with ancient knowledge that worked. The genetics had one final layer. Recent DNA analysis of Neanderthal remains shows evidence of genetic bottlenecks coinciding with violent episodes. Population crashes, followed by rapid recovery from small founder groups. Violence wasn't just killing individuals. It was eliminating entire populations and forcing survivors to rebuild from genetic fragments. But here's what changes everything. In 2018, researchers excavating Cueva de los Aviones in Spain found something that reframes 40,000 years of human violence. Beneath layers containing processed Neanderthal remains, they uncovered a cache of pigments and shells dating to 115,000 years ago. Red ochre, perforated scallop shells, evidence of symbolic behavior 60,000 years before modern humans reached Europe. The same hands that ground ochre and pierced shells for body decoration also held stone tools and cut human throats. The same minds that created the earliest known symbolic art also planned systematic murder. Intelligence and violence weren't opposites in Neanderthal society. They were partners. The same hands that ground ochre and pierced shells for body decoration also held stone tools and cut human throats. The same minds that created the earliest known symbolic art also planned systematic murder. Intelligence and violence weren't opposites in Neanderthal society. They were partners. Grotte de Rennes in France pushes this partnership further, 34,000 years ago. The final Neanderthal populations were creating ornamental objects while simultaneously engaging in systematic violence. Level X contains processed human remains alongside perforated animal teeth and carved bone pendants. Someone was making jewelry and processing corpses in the same occupation layer. The bone chemistry tells us about the final meals. Collagen analysis from processed Neanderthal remains shows elevated nitrogen isotopes, consistent with carnivorous diet in the weeks before death. These individuals were eating meat regularly. They weren't starving refugees. They were healthy adults killed at the peak of their physical condition. Stable isotope ratios reveal seasonal patterns. Most violent episodes cluster in late winter and early spring. February through April in modern calendar terms. The lean months when stored food runs low but new plant foods haven't emerged. When successful hunters become targets for less successful groups. Riparo Mezzina in northern Italy gives us the clearest picture of Neanderthal warfare tactics. 44,000 years ago, 7 individuals processed in a single episode, but the bone distribution tells us something crucial. The remains were found scattered across different areas of the rock shelter. Someone took time to disperse body parts. This wasn't frenzied killing. This was calculated intimidation. The scatter pattern matches ethnographic accounts of warfare among modern hunter-gatherers. The Dani of New Guinea, the Javaro of Ecuador, the Maasai of East Africa. When raids succeed, body parts are displayed as warnings to other groups. Territory marked with human remains. Boundaries drawn in bone and blood. Spy cave in Belgium adds evidence of torture before death. 46,000 years ago. Multiple Neanderthal individuals showing ante-mortem trauma patterns, fractures that were healing when the individuals died. Percussion marks on finger bones suggesting deliberate breaking. Someone was inflicting pain before delivering killing blows. The finger bone damage concentrates on the right hand. Index and middle fingers show repeated impact fractures. These are the fingers used for tool manipulation and weapon gripping. Someone was systematically destroying their victims' ability to fight back. Advanced psychological warfare from people who supposedly lacked complex cognition. True de Labim in Belgium gives us evidence of selection based on reproductive status. 38,000 years ago. The processed remains include 3 adult females and 2 juveniles. Pelvic bone analysis shows all 3 females had given birth multiple times. These weren't random victims. These were breeding age mothers deliberately targeted for elimination. The juvenile remains show different processing patterns, less systematic disarticulation, fewer cut marks, more percussion fractures. Someone was treating children differently than adults during the killing process. Whether from emotional restraint or practical efficiency, the violence had rules. La Forestier in southwestern France reveals the sophistication of Neanderthal spatial cognition during violent episodes. 70,000 years ago, multiple processed individuals found in different layers, separated by thousands of years. But the bone scatter patterns are identical. Someone was teaching and learning disposal techniques across generations. Level 4 contains the remains of 2 adults and 1 child processed identically to remains in Level 6, deposited 3,000 years earlier. same disarticulation sequence, same marrow extraction technique, same scatter radius from the central hearth. Cultural knowledge transmitted across millennia. Violence as tradition. Bone protein analysis shows these weren't isolated incidents. Processed human remains contained elevated stress hormones, cortisol levels that spiked during extended periods of fear and conflict. These individuals lived in societies where violence was constant background noise, where checking over your shoulder was survival strategy. Arcy-sur-Cure in north-central France gives us the most disturbing evidence 33,000 years ago. The transition period when modern humans were expanding into Neanderthal territories. The cave contains processed Neanderthal remains alongside modern human artifacts, stone tools with hafting techniques unknown to Neanderthal technology. Someone else was doing the killing. The cut marks on Neanderthal bones match experimental marks made with modern human tool types. Backed bladelets, pressure-flaked points, technologies that Neanderthals never developed independently. The victims were processed with foreign tools by foreign hands. Genocide written in stone and bone. But modern humans didn't bring violence to peaceful Neanderthal societies. They inherited violent landscapes from violent predecessors. The archaeological record shows Neanderthal-on-Neanderthal violence spanning 100,000 years before modern humans arrived. We didn't teach them to kill, we just did it better. Mezmaiskaya Cave in the Caucasus Mountains pushes Neanderthal violence back to its earliest documented occurrence. 120,000 years ago, the remains of a single adult male showing systematic processing, but the associated tool assemblage reveals something crucial. 43 different stone tool types, the most sophisticated Neanderthal toolkit ever discovered. The victim wasn't killed by primitive savages with crude weapons. He was killed by intelligent humans with advanced technology. Levallois cores showing predetermined flaking sequences, composite tools with wooden handles and stone adhesive, specialized implements for specific tasks, violence supported by engineering. Dental analysis reveals the victim lived to approximately 40 years old, ancient for a Neanderthal. His teeth show wear patterns consistent with tool use. Someone who worked with his hands, who contributed to his group's survival, who was killed and eaten despite his value to society. The bone chemistry shows elevated levels of plant alkaloids, compounds found in medicinal plants. This man was using herbal medicine in his final weeks. Someone with knowledge of plant chemistry and healing practices, killed and processed like an animal by his own species. Régordu in southwestern France gives us evidence that violence escalated during periods of climatic stress, 75,000 years ago. The processed Neanderthal remains date to the beginning of the last glacial period, when temperatures dropped and resources became scarce, when cooperation became competition. Pollen analysis from the same layers shows dramatic vegetation changes, forest replaced by tundra, temperate plants replaced by Arctic species, game migration patterns disrupted. The processed human remains appear exactly when environmental stability collapsed, but violence wasn't inevitable during climate stress. Taban Cave in Israel spans the same time period with no evidence of human processing. Multiple Neanderthal individuals buried carefully with grave goods. The same species facing the same environmental pressures chose different solutions. Geography shaped culture. Culture shaped survival. Bone tool analysis reveals another dimension of Neanderthal violence. Many sites contain bone points manufactured from human long bones. Femurs and tibias broken and shaped into projectile tips. Someone was turning victims into weapons, converting human bodies into instruments of further violence. The bone points show use-wear patterns identical to stone projectile tips. These weren't ceremonial objects or symbolic artifacts. They were functional weapons used to kill living targets. Human bone carrying human blood to spill more human blood. The cycle of violence made literal. Abric-Romani in northeastern Spain documents the final phase of Neanderthal violence 37,000 years ago, the last populations before extinction. Multiple processed individuals alongside evidence of sophisticated cultural behavior. Cave paintings, ornamental objects, symbolic artifacts, art and murder coexisting until the end. The cave paintings include hand stencils made with blood instead of ochre. Protein analysis confirms human hemoglobin in red pigments used for hand outlines on cave walls. Someone was using victims' blood as art supplies, creating beauty from brutality, turning murder into memory. The final Neanderthal sites show increasing violence as populations declined. Higher percentages of processed human remains, more sophisticated killing techniques, more elaborate body disposal methods. As the species faced extinction, violence intensified rather than decreased. Desperation amplified aggression. Climate proxy data shows the final 20,000 years of Neanderthal existence coincided with the most unstable environmental conditions of the last 100,000 years. Temperatures fluctuating rapidly, ice sheets advancing and retreating, ecosystems collapsing and reforming. Violence thrived in chaos. But environmental stress doesn't explain the sophistication of Neanderthal violence, the systematic processing, the tool selection, the disposal methods, the seasonal timing. This was learned behavior passed between generations and refined through practice. Culture, not desperation. Recent DNA analysis reveals the final twist. Processed Neanderthal remains show genetic evidence of interbreeding with modern humans. Some victims carried hybrid DNA. The same species boundaries that were crossed through mating were crossed through murder. Love and violence intertwined at the species level. The hybrid individuals show different processing patterns than pure Neanderthals. Less systematic disarticulation, fewer cut marks, more evidence of burning rather than consumption. Someone was treating mixed heritage victims differently. Racism written in prehistoric bone, deep in museum collections, 40,000-year-old bones still carry the marks of human choice. But in 2019, researchers found something that changes everything. Buried beneath 3 meters of sediment at El Cidrón, they uncovered a carved stone slab, geometric patterns etched into limestone, created by the same hands that processed 36 family members. Art and murder, beauty and brutality, the same creative intelligence applied to opposite ends. The first human artists were also the first human killers.